Hello, Spain. How you guys doing? Great to be here. Todd and I did this like 10 days ago at E3, but here we are again.
So we did. We see each other a lot.
This is our road show.
How have you been?
The European version. Things are good. So you're kicking off a little vacation here in Spain, right?
A little bit. I get to mix it with coming to a great conference like this, and take a few days off after the E3 craziness. So
yes. Well, as you guys saw, Todd had a big E3 with BGS, kind of outlining the near future and the far future of what you guys are working on. Now that dust has settled, you've gone back, talked to the team. How did E3 go for you guys? How do you?
We felt good. I mean, there's always things that we want to do better. We're probably self-critical in that, but we felt good in terms of it was a lot of information for everybody to absorb. Yeah. Kind of a fire hose of here's a game, here's another game. You know, here's Fallout 76. Here's a mobile game with Blades, and then here's a quick kind of sneak peek at what's coming in the future with Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6.
So what did you feel that people didn't get, or what do you feel that you could have been
Well,
more
when you're at E3 and you have a half hour to dig in on all that stuff, there's a lot of thought in terms of what information can everybody absorb, in that moment. Right. And then there's still, time to dig in on the details of those games, particularly Fallout 76.
So
there's a lot of there's a lot of nuance to what we're doing, and I think a lot of people try to figure out what it is in their head, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong, but ultimately they just have to play it.
You gotta let us play it, right?
Well, eventually. We're doing a beta, so.
Yes, and playing in November. So you've had an amazing career, and first of all, congratulations on the award. I know you've received many of them, but everyone is special and comes from different communities around the world, especially everyone here in Spain who knows and loves your games. You mentioned, driving to the same office for 25 years, and I think people, that know your career, know your games, probably wonder, what's the average day now for Todd Howard? You've gone to the same office for 25 years, but obviously now you have studios in 3 locations, you have multiple projects going. I mean, I know every day is different for you, but what is the average day for Todd in 2018? How do you spend your time now?
Well, now that we're doing a lot of projects, I will spend, I have a day carved out probably for each project. Okay. And then the one that is getting the most attention at the time, I spend more time on. So 76 and Blades get a lot of my time right now. Right. And I'm in more meetings as it's gotten bigger. Yeah. So again, I work with an incredible team, and a lot of times now, as opposed to, I haven't coded in one of our games, and they banned me back in 2002. Oh, so, wow. 2006 is probably the last code I wrote. Okay. So I used to really dig in, and every project that goes on, everybody knows what they're doing. So I spend a little more time in meetings discussing the game, looking at the game together. Right. And sometimes if something, I prefer to work out a design with other people. Once in a while, there'll be something where it's not quite solved, and I'll go back and work on it on my own. But then I'm also pitching it. Again, it's very collaborative. So one of us will come in and pitch, here's how this could work. And sometimes that's me, and sometimes that's other people.
Over that, 2+ decades, you said when you started out, you were, producing games. You were then getting involved in design, obviously, building these worlds and your vision for where games were going to go. Now that you're 2 decades in, how has your role changed? I mean, it's more managerial. I mean, do you still feel like you get to be very creative, or what's that?
Oh, very creative. Yeah, because the team has worked together for so long, the managerial part is minimal for me, which I'm very, very fortunate of. Yeah. And then I become anti-management then. So I probably need to do a little bit more. And we have really good producers, and we have different studio heads in each of the studios. So Ashley Chang, who I've worked with for 20 years, he's the studio head in Rockville now. Yeah. So he manages more of the day-to-day staff, where I can focus creatively on what we're doing now and what we should be doing in the future.
And tell me about that creative process for you. You thanked your family for putting up with, what I'm sure is you're a creative individual. It's you're very passionate about your ideas, and they come to you, I'm sure, at all times of the day, weekends, nights, whatnot. tell us about that creative process and how has that changed in 20 years now when you're getting excited about, even the future games and whatnot. I mean, where do you find your inspiration? Do you write it down in a notebook? Like, what is your sort of process now when you get excited about things?
I do. I have a notebook, but I now I do it on my iPhone. I'll make when I go through my notes field, like this should work this way.
You gotta get into
that part is still probably the same for me. I think about worlds. I think about tone. I bizarrely think about the beginning of the game. Like, this is the first thing the player sees. This is how it starts. This is a weird idiosyncrasy when it comes to games, but I think about the interface. Because I think interfaces, like, are a lot of the personality of games. So I tend to still think about that. I mean, something like Starfield, we thought about that for at least 10 years.
Right.
Conversations. It would be like this. We could do this. We could do this. So they're very long. It's a long process because the games take so long. But yeah.
Well, I was thinking because you have one thing with Starfield that I didn't really even realize at E3 is with Fallout, with Elder Scrolls, you in some ways inherited those worlds. That,
very much.
It's like
yes.
other people. And so
yes.
this really your Starfield will be your first kind of Todd Howard vision from
Well, again,
a team effort, but I'm saying, but
not just me.
You being there for the original, creation of the name, the world, all that. And
if you look at the team, none of us have really done that together.
Right. Yeah.
Despite all of our games and all the success we have, we've never. In the Elder Scrolls, when we started,
right, there was a shell there, but
well, it was is a very kind of generic fantasy. It had its parts. Right. We wanted to push it to have it be more of its own unique identity. Yeah. So. Proud of the work everyone did there. And then Fallout, again, not the original creators. All the credit goes to Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky and Scott Anderson, the people at Interplay who did that game. We loved it, though. That was something where we felt we could do something really, really special with that. But it's going through our filter. So I think we did make it our own. And I would say it this way, whenever we're doing a game, whether it's one we made or we're looking at Fallout, we are going back and looking at that and reinterpreting it, even if we did it, right? So when it comes to an Elder Scrolls 6, you're looking at Skyrim, you're looking at Oblivion, you're looking at more. I replay all the old games and how do we want it to feel this time? The difference with Starfield is that's the difference. It's like there is no previous, whether we created it or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the part where our ideas were just, they were all over the map. Like, maybe, yes, no, definitely not, yes. And, it took us a while to get that kind of cohesive, this is what Starfield is.
Right.
And now that project is, off and running in a good way. And that was also why we felt good announcing it.
When you say what it is, how do you define that? Is it a design document? Is it like, I know the first 15 minutes of the game, here are the 5 moments that we've never had in games before that I want to deliver? Like, how do you crystallize what it is?
It's usually the experience of the game. What does it feel like to play it? We have a list of okay, here are the big hitter features that we want. Some of those we get married to, and some of those we don't. It's more of a vibe. This is the tone of the game. This is what it feels like to play it. If we haven't nailed that, then features can come and go as long as you're paying off on that vibe.
So that's it. It sounds you're saying there's sort of moments that emotional moments for the player where they're sort of in the game, something happens or they have a certain experience. How do you articulate that? Do you write those down, or do you just have sort of a
lot of times they might be written down just in short phrases, but usually it's a visual presentation. Okay. Here's the world. Here are things. And I think when you look at some games, you can see a piece of concept art, and your mind just goes I want to go there. I want to do what that person is doing in that image. Yeah. And I think it has to register that quickly. This is what it feels like. So initially we'll do a series of concept stuff. Right. Maps, world design, things like that.
Okay. So you've done a lot in your career, but something like Starfield, building a new IP from the ground up, is that the kind of stuff that gets you really excited? Is something you haven't done, even though you've done so much?
I'm excited. I'm excited a lot. Very excitable.
Yes.
So even with our games, we always want to do something new. I like to stay away from, I call them like +1 sequels.
Okay.
And I enjoy playing +1 sequels. Like as a player, I don't enjoy making them as much. So we've tried to stay away from it. By that, I mean a game that just is the last game with a little extra. So even if you look at 76, that is a very, very different Fallout game. And we're very aware of that. Like, well, we think a lot of people will like this because we like it. There'll be a lot of people probably who won't. Yeah. But we need to balance that with like, this is an idea we have, and there's a lot of old Fallout stuff in it, but it's a very new experience. And then on the mobile side, Blades is like a pared down version of the Elder Scrolls. Like if you go back to Arena, it's very much of a glorified dungeon hack. Yeah. But I love those games, so it was, how can we do a really good dungeon adventure game on a phone? Yeah. And that is that's an all new challenge. And then Starfield has its own challenges because of its newness. So again, long answer, but I always want to do something new, even if on the surface it feels like, oh, that's another one of those. Right.
You mentioned replaying the old games, old Elder Scrolls to inspire what you're going to do next. How much do you play other games, other inspirations? Like, do you look at certainly what's popular out there? Like, are you playing Fortnite and saying, hey, what can we extract from this? I mean, how much do you play every other game out there?
I play less this year because we're shipping than I usually do, so I end up watching things on YouTube or Twitch or Mixer, things like that. I'll watch people play just to expedite the process. I still play games all the time. I love Fortnite. I play on my phone, my iPad, anything. I play a lot of Madden football, which sounds weird. Like that's American football. It's rare that I will. It's only once in a while I go in to do research. Like if I want to see how somebody did something. Usually I love the art form. I play for fun, and the games that. I like when time passes I realize I've been sitting there for 3 hours, and that's where I'm really, really into something. And that's where I know, and we're doing our own games where, you're not just developing it, you're playing it at work to test it, and then you realize like, oh my God, I missed dinner. What happened to the last 3 hours? Then you realize, oh, I think we're onto it now. Yep. I think it's there.
I just want to keep going. Over the 2 decades, you've had some spectacular successes. When you look back, are there, what have been some of the more trying times for you as a developer? I know there are a lot of developers out here who, aspire to make games as big as you do, but sometimes, struggle, have challenges. I think it'd be interesting for them to hear a little bit about some of the moments that have not been as, sort of perfect for you in your career.
And I think this is true for all developers. I think any developer, even, again, if you're small, shipping anything is really, really difficult. Our stuff is super ambitious, and the one thing I push on the team to do is to keep being ambitious. So even where it seems like we're not going to make it and it's not going to ship or it's going to suck, like you got to push through that fear because playing it safe is kind of the worst way to do things in my book. Every game has had its... Morrowind was very, very difficult. The company went through some really hard times there. If that game didn't do well, we were probably out of business. Fortunately, it did well. But that was pretty tricky because they're also our first time on console. Yep. And I remember seeing, that was in the original Xbox, I remember seeing the copies come back on the disc and thinking, I can't believe this is real. Yeah. Like, I can't believe this exists. That was technically a really hard one. The game will, I was going to say some tricks we do. We actually crash the game if we're running out of memory. We intentionally crash the game, and it looks like a load screen.
And then reload
it's a trick you can
yeah.
do on the original Xbox.
Yeah.
Crash to a load screen. The Oblivion was really difficult. They're all difficult, but Oblivion was another one where we really pushed the technology, and it was a new console. Another one where like this is never ever going to work, and then somehow it does. There's a line. Is this movie Shakespeare in Love? I think, and I might get it wrong. I haven't seen it in forever. Not that I watch that movie a lot. But people ask. He has a line in the movie where Jeffrey Rush said, they say, how is this going to work out? And he's like, I don't know, but it always does.
Just going to. Yeah.
And that's how I feel often. Like, is this going to, are we going to get this done at a high level? Like, we will. I don't know how, but it always does.
Well, and you're obviously in a medium where technology continues to advance, which is exciting, but also limiting in a way. And we've talked before about like the next Elder Scrolls. You were kind of waiting for the right technology to be there to realize kind of your vision. How often do you feel restricted still as a creator in terms of the ambition of what the moment is you want someone to feel, but then not being able to realize that in the game world? I'm sure it's it's been reduced compared to 20 years ago, but how much do you still feel limited?
I never do, actually. Yep. I think when you're doing a game, that is always a series of choices. There's another exercise I do that I've talked about before, which is to go read old game reviews. Mm-hmm. So even though you might pull an old game up now and be like, oh, this looks terrible, or it's not that exciting to look at, if you read an old review of that game, you'll see like how it made you feel at the time. Mm-hmm. And that was a series of choices where it felt transportive. Yep. I mean, wacky one, but pole position in the arcade. Like the first racing game, we're like, that looks real. There will never be a racing game that looks as real as that. Or then you look at Gran Turismo on the original PlayStation. Like that looks photo real. Yep. Like I cannot believe a game looks that good. Yep. And I will say visually, there's a diminishing returns now, right, where things are looking so good and so good and so good that to have a jump is getting more difficult. Mm-hmm. So the jumps now are in how reactive is the world. Like, right, look what all the AI does. Look at how I can affect the world. So those kind of things are still exciting. But again, it's a series of trade-offs. There's very little today that you can't do in a game. You just can't do it all. Right. And that's a function of technology, but also your own time. Mm-hmm. Any studio is limited by, okay, what do we want to focus on? Right. I have another thing I like to say, which is we can do anything, we just can't do everything. Right. And we try to, live by that in the studio.
I'm sure you're right, because it's like, with something like Elder Scrolls, thinking of where that's going to go in the future, and you said like AI worlds, open worlds, it's like there's an unlimited number of possibilities sort of what could happen in that world, but sort of picking your battles. I mean, I'm sure you don't want to say much about where you think it's necessarily going to go in the next game, but overall in the industry, what are the sort of trends or areas where you get excited as a creator? Is it AI? Is it sort of, is it the emergent gameplay? Like, what are the types of things, the online stuff you're just experimenting now with 76? I mean, that's huge. These shared worlds, like what are the sort of trends that you get excited about the next 5 to 10 years of the types of games we're going to play?
First, the main thing that excites me about the industry, and you see it here, is that games are successful everywhere now. Right? There was a period of time where a game had to be just a big AAA thing, or it had to be on PC, or it had to be console. You read PCs are dying, or consoles are dying, or phones are dying. Now it's successful everywhere, which I think is really, really important for the health of the industry. So that's what excites me. It also starts exciting me where people can, play the game. They can play it on their phone, but then go home and play it on their PC or their console, something that we're going to be doing with Blades. Yeah. As far as actual kind of the stuff that we do, or the big open worlds, we're very interested in, obviously, visual fidelity, but it's bad to say that you almost get that for free. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work that goes into that, but I think everybody realizes that is going to continue to happen. I think kind of the dynamism of the worlds and that emergent gameplay, how people can touch it, and it feels real. Like the world is reacting the way you expect it to. People play our games that way. Or you play any game. Usually start the first hour of any game is you going, can I? Can I? What happens if I try to jump on this fence? What if I do this? What if I do this? What if I do this? And the more times we can say yes and make that feel real and not gamey, right? Like the more immersive it is and the more emergent, the word you used, it is for everybody who's playing it. So that's where a lot of our thoughts are.
And as a designer, that's, exciting, but it also kind of changes the scope of what you're doing, where, certainly even Elder Scrolls people have played hundreds of hours, but at some point, now we're seeing these games that just kind of continue to grow and evolve with new content. It used to be, we have some DLC. Now it's like, in some ways people think these worlds are just going to go on forever. When you think of, moving forward in your games that you're building, is that how you start to think about it, of sort of like we're creating this platform, we're not creating a game anymore?
We've thought that way for a while. How we go about it's a little bit different. When we did Morrowind, that was the one where the first thing we did was build the editor, the Elder Scrolls construction set. Yep. And I named it for Stuart Smith's construction set from the Apple II, which I loved. And we wanted to make a system, A, we needed it to make the game, and B, that users could use it to have this game live on. The ways you go about that, we've done it always. Horse armor was, and all of the DLC stuff we did for Oblivion. And one of the ways you do that now is to have something that is connected, that you have an infrastructure, you can update the games. And that's one of the things that obviously we're doing with 76 that we're really excited about, knowing that the game that we ship is going to be a very different game a year later, because we can react to what people are doing more so than anything else we've done.
Do you see down the road, it's emergent gameplay, but does it get to a point where there's emergent narrative? Like Ken Levine's working on what he calls narrative Legos, the idea of sort of, stories that, you have a main quest line, but there could be other stories that evolve. I mean, is that too far out? Do you think is that in your lifetime that you'll basically be creating the playground?
We've tried some of it, and we haven't had great success there. Yeah. I will say the technology for the Radiant story system in Skyrim is phenomenal. It has the pebble in the lake rings you can do a lot of really, really great stuff with it. And we tried and then ended up we pared it back. And so I think the technology is there for it, without a doubt. It's really having a really, really good design to do that. Ken Levine I know well, and I think, he's in the best position to crack that. I really hope he does.
Right. No, you said, and sometimes you have to limit the scale of what you're doing because, it's some of the ambition with your games. It's and people want to have a great stories, that great first hour, that great, end sequence, but then sort of extending it with players. Tell us a bit about player content. You said that's something that you've, been a big part of what you've built on. Mods is something that, has really been a big part of your legacy, I think. How will players play into your games moving forward, or what do you think the role of the player will be, in Bethesda Game Studios games in the future?
What the role of a modder would be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or player content, I should say. Sorry, yeah.
We are still pushing on making that easily and available to everybody. Oh. So even though it definitely becomes this long tail life of our games, but if you look at the raw numbers, it's still not as great as we would like, the people that are consuming the mods. And so we are always looking at avenues to how do we get more creators creating great content, and then how to make it easy and safe is the other one. Yeah. So I would say the recent stuff we've done on the Bethesda Net side of Fallout 4 and Skyrim connecting to mods on consoles has worked out really, really great. It's way more popular than we ever thought. But we still think there's a ways to go there. On Fallout 76, even though everyone is connected and it match makes you to kind of an invisible server and you can play with your friends, we know, based on our history, that the future of that game and the long life of it is in people having their own worlds that they can mod and make their own and say, hey, come play at mine, see what I did as a creator. Or there's an easy way for them to get mods and just pick and choose. I want my game this way, this way, this way, this way. Because no matter what we do, once you release tools and you are basically, you have this huge community making things, the best stuff rises to the top.
And what role will you or the team play in that moving forward? When you look at Fallout 76, are you looking at, here's year 2, year 3 of, a plan of sort of, content and how it will evolve? Some of it will be obviously.
We're definitely going to be creating our own stuff, if that's what you're asking. Yeah. So we have a cadence in mind. We'll see how it goes. Our priority, if everything works out perfectly with launch, which won't be the case, we'll be able to make a lot of content. But we know our priority. It's a big new thing for us. Yeah. We've said so. We're scared about how well can we make this work? Because we look at some other big online games, and even the people who have done it a lot, there's always problems. Yeah. So we're not kind of naive enough to say it's going to be perfect. And so we want to focus when the game comes out, that first however many months, on making sure that it's as good as it can be for what it is, and then we'll have new content start rolling out.
and obviously I'm sure react a little bit to sort of what, how players are enjoying the game. So it's like you can have a plan, but I'm sure you're going to modify it somewhat based on.
Yeah, the good news is that, again, our team has done it for a long time, so our ability to know our tools and make content, it's one of the things I think, we have a lot of experience there. For sure.
And you had a lot of fun at E3, poking fun at the many versions of Skyrim. You've become certainly an internet meme. You got to know your meme. You can look up Todd Howard, and there's many
Don't do that.
Todd posting and all these things. I mean, tell me a bit about the, even this year I think there's all that stuff with Wikipedia. You've just become this sort of icon of,
And I don't know why.
And but it's Reddit, everyone.
It's the internet.
Become this thing. And,
they decide.
And you are, I think the thing that everyone.
I just ride the wave.
Even though you're not on Twitter, you're watching everything, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm not on social media. Sorry, someone just groaned.
I joke with you at E3. It's like, now that you're making an online game, you need to come online. But
I've had people tell me it's a good thing you're not on social media, because I would have some things I say in private. I might be,
might be too quick.
I'll post this.
But what do you make of all that? I mean, it's interesting. Like, the memes, the Todd posting, all the Skyrim versions and stuff. I mean, you're conscious of it. Is it?
People send me things. Look, I'm in on the joke. I think it's funny. I think it's all. They're fans of our games, and they're having fun with it, and they'll have fun with some things that I say, or they make up things I say, and I don't. None of it bothers me. I think it's all good.
And some of it is, selling the dream or vision, I think, of, what these games are going to be. And you need to sort of, even with the team, I think, sort of, sell the vision of, like, go to that mountain, do what you want to do. And it's like, that's what
I think that's how I think. And that's what I want us to strive to. So that's, like, I think the way you see me now, like, that's how I am in the office. I'm very, video games to me, it was more than just, hey, this is a fun diversion, right? When I played Ultima, this will sound cliche, that was a special time for me. Like, sitting in my room when I'm 13 or 14 and doing it. Yeah. I have really, really fond memories. I have fond memories of getting my computer when I was in college and installing Wing Commander or Civilization. Like, that was important time to me. And so I hear a lot from our fans and other people where they feel the same way. Mm-hmm. So I never, I want us to aspire to those things, but that's how I really think about it. There's another thing we do where we have, I don't know if people know what the Make-A-Wish Foundation is in America. I don't know if they have it, everyone know, where kids or people under 18 have, they have cancer or some other life-threatening disease or situation, and they get to make a wish, and we have had a lot of them wish to come to our studio. So that's a good, you want a reality check at work. Like, you're doing your day-to-day, and then a family comes in with their child. They could wish for anything, and they've come to your studio because they want to see how you make their favorite game, and they want to play it. Yeah. And it is by far the greatest thing that we do. We don't talk about it a lot, I am right now, but it's a very private thing. But the one takeaway is that the family, because they're always coming with their family, obviously, that they think it's just kind of like a fun, this is what my child wants to do, but then they see this operation, we have hundreds of people, and what we're doing and how passionate we are, and they have this new connection. They leave with a new connection with their child, and it is seriously magical. It's the greatest thing we do.
No, and I think we all know the impact that these games have had in many ways, because we've spent so much time with them too, and have grown to love them over the years. When you look at all the things you have accomplished, is there anything that you personally feel like you haven't accomplished yet with your games that sort of is that holy grail? I mean, I'm sure it's getting a little more, in experience you still want to give players and whatnot, but is there anything you still look at in your career and say, hey, I haven't done that yet?
I'm always excited about the next game. So we look at Starfield, we haven't created a new IP that stands up to Fallout and the Elder Scrolls. Yeah. So that's something that I've always wanted to do that we're doing now.
Right, because I mean, it's literally, the name, the world, the characters, all that is from scratch. Yeah. And how iterative is that now that you got into it? Is it harder than you thought, or I mean, it's liberating in a way to sort of say you can start with a blank slate, but I'm sure even in the past, 10 years, even though you just announced it now, you said you guys have been thinking about this. Like, how much iteration has gone on?
Initially, a lot. That part was harder than I thought.
Yeah.
I thought we'd be like, that's the look, that's what we're doing. And there was a lot of different versions of it for a while until it funneled into that's the one. That took longer than I anticipated, but super fun. I'm not like, I'm not complaining. That's what we do. It's great.
And also, I mean, the fact that you get to do these, sort of in parallel in a way, right? I mean, has that been, has it been challenging to sort of have, in many ways, you've got, as you said at E3, you've got Elder Scrolls 6, in some state of pre-production. You've got Starfield. You guys are playing in the office now. And then Fallout and Blades. I mean, all these things.
There was a period where it was very, very challenging. Yeah. Now we've definitely settled in. We've grown the studios a lot. People know we have the studio in Maryland, which is the one that I work at, and a lot of us have been there for a long time. And then the studio in Montreal, which a lot of them worked on Fallout 4 and also Fallout Shelter. Yeah. And now the studio in Austin, which was Battlecry Studios, we've worked with for 3 or 4 years now. 3 years, who have become, part of Bethesda Game Studios. So that amount of people all working together, there are a lot of new people as well. Yeah. And so when we grew, last year, there was a lot of new people, and getting that sorted out we went through some growing pains, but it was a good experience for all of us. So I would say we're juggling a little bit more than we used to, because we always overlapped. But there are more people involved, which I knew we needed to do. So we looked forward to Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, and what you have in mind for those games. You realize it's going to take more people than the typical 100-person studio that we had for a long time.
And for you personally, obviously you've kind of outlined, a large part of your career moving forward with all these projects and whatnot. I mean, are there other things that you want to do with your career? I mean, do some do you just want to keep making games? Do you want to go off and make a movie? Do you want to write a book? I mean, what are the things that Todd Howard still wants to accomplish in life?
Games are where I want to be. I think I'm still, every year there's a new idea that we can't do, and there's a new technology, there's something, that excites us. And so I would say that I want it to be sustainable, that eventually there will come a day, obviously, where I'm not making games at Bethesda. Hopefully it's a very long time away. Right. But I want to make sure that who we are and what the worlds are and what the company is and the studio, that is sustainable far, far beyond me.
And what do you hope people, take away as your signature on the gaming industry? I mean, you're getting a Lifetime Achievement Award here. I think people all have their own personal experiences with your games, but what do you hope the takeaway is when people hear the name Todd Howard?
That's a deep question, Geoff.
Hey.
I would say that the games meant as much to them as it meant to us, that it meant to me. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time in these worlds, and that I hope that people look back on, say, a Skyrim or a Fallout as fondly as I do. Their own kind of impression of me, I'd rather they focus on the games and the studio than anything about me, honestly.
And I think what's interesting is we're getting to a time where, some of these games and worlds will sort of continue to persist, and that's what sort of is interesting.
That is, yeah. But even now, the amount of people who play Skyrim 7 years later is millions and millions of people every month that are still playing that game, which is why we keep releasing it. If you want us to stop releasing it, stop buying it.
Yes. No, and people want, people wanted the Fallout anniversary. I mean, it's just like, it's just like you said, there's this interest, and that's part of the thing is that, these games are, in some ways, for many years, you remember this is, especially in consoles, that you couldn't even go back and play the old ones, at least in PC. Steam and things like that, you could go back and download them, but it's like there is, and they do sort of hold up.
And that's becoming more and more of a thing, which I think is great. Yeah. That the platforms, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, everybody's like making that you can easily play these old games. That's very, very important to me, and I think it's great for the industry.
Did you ever go back and play Terminator?
I actually did.
Really?
In the last year, Future Shock, yeah.
Why? Just to check it out?
I don't know. I don't remember why, but I did.
And what did, I mean, it's, because that's the thing is, as you guys probably know, Todd worked on, I think, 2 Terminator games,
I
right?
did. Yeah, we had the Terminator
Nice.
license. And it was in legal limbo. So, like, no entity owned the license, but we definitely had it.
Right.
So there was no one to check with.
Do what you want.
So it was like, we just did whatever the hell we wanted.
Yeah.
And that's why those games are awesome.
Yeah.
And then, what's fascinating about those Terminator games, like if you look at Future Shock, the way we build worlds, 3D terrain with instance objects on it is very similar to how we still build worlds. Yeah.
Do you ever, you look at that, do you ever say, hey, one time I just want to make a crazy action shooter or just, something different? I mean, obviously id's doing that type of stuff and Bethesda is, but for you personally, you've, flexed some different muscles with some of the mobile stuff. But do you ever say like, hey, this is a totally different genre of game. I just have this idea and I want to do this, crazy shooter one day or crazy action adventure game like in a, different genre?
We tend to think very big so that we always, even if it starts there, then it becomes this big. Like, let's do a multiplayer mode for Fallout 4. Now it's a, giant separate project. We just did Alexa Skyrim. That's different. Yes. So,
which you can actually download. Yes.
I would say, we like to pick our battles in mobile and some things that are unique.
Right.
But when it comes to the main games, we think very big. That's what we feel that we're built to do, and it's what we enjoy making. So,
do you think you'll get to a point where Starfield, that's hugely ambitious? You've announced Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 76 will sort of continue to persist. Do you worry that 5 years from now you sort of have 2-3 things all out there and they're all going to require content? And I mean, you're obviously trying to build the organization to scale to that, but in some ways it probably is a little daunting when you think about these things.
Yeah, but it's not an entirely entirely different situation than we're in now, where the amount of people who are playing Fallout Shelter on mobile, we cannot get them enough content.
Yeah.
Fallout 4 is still it's our most played game. It's in the top 20 on like every platform it's on, and we can't get enough content out and support that the way we want. And then the same with Skyrim, or Skyrim Switch has a big community that we haven't supported the way we'd like. So, for us, we do our best. As we scale up, we'll be able to, put people in the right places and do that. But we've been very lucky where our games have been popular enough that wherever we're putting those people, that we're finding that there's an audience for what they're doing. So we just have to choose our battles.
Well, and part of it may be going back to that question around player-created content, if there's a way to, empower the players to create
exactly.
more.
That's one of our drives there, where we will never have the ability to satiate everybody. So that's also why we like dynamic systems that create a lot of emergent gameplay and having mod tools out where the players can help facilitate, and here's cool things that change the game or make it interesting.
Yeah, and so do you think all your games moving forward will have some element of that? Do you think that's going to be one of the signatures?
I can't say whether Blades will, but we'd like to. We like to find ways to do that. But I don't know if you mean the user-generated content part, but the emergent part where...
Yeah.
The emergent part, absolutely, 100%. I think that's, one of our signatures. When it comes to the users creating things and sharing them, I would say it's always a goal of ours, and sometimes we can do that easier than other times.
Well, it sounds like you have a busy...
I am busy,
next
but again, I'm a kid in a candy store. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been an incredible legacy with so many incredible games. And, the studio, as you said, you have so many great guys there, and you mentioned Linus, and, people know, obviously, Todd, but, guys like Craig, who was a sysop with me on CompuServe forums in the early 90s, and now is there. And it's like, I mean, it's Ashley. I mean, you've really had an amazing team, I think, at the core, which helps you bring that to life. And that's what's great to see is, not just you, but even the BGS brand, I think, means so much to so many people in this room. And you've always stood for an incredible level of quality, and games that I think, as you said, have transported us to great places. And we're excited to see all the new places you're going to take us in the years ahead. So, Todd,
we are too.
Thanks for hanging with us.
Thank you.
Give it up for Todd Howard, everyone.
Thank all of you. Geoff Keighley.
Thank you.
Todd, I was wondering, would you take like a couple of questions from the audience?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's just questions.
So it's your opportunity.
Hands up
I mean,
and
I'm
we'll
trying to push
get some
these people to be more participative and to speak with
Hey,
you. So
it's all about the players. Yeah, I'm excited to see what people have to say. Yeah, let's.
you have some questions over here?
Let's start. Yeah, right here.
Okay.
Front row. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, are you gonna give you a mic or? I think so, right? Mic's coming down. Front row.
Yeah, let's just start with first row maybe, and then over there.
Yeah, you talked about the being able to update your games now after release. I'm curious about how that has changed the development process of the game, because like I imagine when you release a game, the first impression is also incredibly important for its success. So, if that has changed how you manage the development process internally.
It mainly changes it, and I think it's true for most developers now, where as opposed to when you were doing a console game before, you would do it, send it off to certification, and then you're moving on because your ability to touch it is nil. So now you keep a team on it, and some games that are online, that like the whole development team stays on it, and some games are smaller. You might leave obviously a smaller team on it. The good thing with our group is everybody works on everything, so we don't have like a Fallout team and an Elder Scrolls team. Mobile is probably a little bit more separate, and the back-end services for online are more separate. But for the most part, all the gameplay programmers and the content creators, the artists, designers, they're moving between project to project. So if we need to update, Fallout 4 with something, they can move over quickly.
Thank you.
Hi. My question is, you said that Starfield has been a project during the span of 10 years, and while you have been working on that, you have been working on other games that Bethesda has released. My question is, how much did those projects you have participated had an impact in your development of this idea for Starfield? Also, when Fallout Spain.
When Fallout Spain? I'll do the first question. So when we say we've worked on Starfield, it's more thinking about it, like conversations. What would it be? We didn't actually start development on Starfield till we finished Fallout 4. And every game we do influences the next game we're doing and how people react to it. So we're always listening and watching what our fans are doing, what they do initially when a game comes out, and then what they do over the long run. And that has really changed how we go about, okay, what are we going to do in this game? Because we realize as time goes on, they're going to play it a lot. They're going to play it for 1,000 hours. And so, Fallout Spain, I don't know. It's very sorry.
No news here. Yeah, questions in the back, it looks like. Yeah, go back there. Or yeah.
Hello.
Oh.
Sorry, I have a really boring question.
Where
I'm so
are
sorry. Here?
Oh, hi.
Oh, okay.
All right, cool.
I have a boring question. I'm sorry.
I have a boring
so
answer.
3 years ago, it was the first Bethesda E3 showcase. At that time, it seemed like a really big deal. It was a lot of expectation. It seemed like an important step from a status point of view. What was it like for the studio?
A little scary. The first one we did was 4 years ago. It was at the Dolby Theater where they have the Oscars, which are the big movie awards. And that partly they suckered me into it because they said, what if you only have to give one demo at E3? I used to go and give you're going to give a demo every hour for a week. And they're like, what if you just gave one? I'd be like, I'll do anything just to give one demo. Pete Hines gets credit for that.
That's 30, 40 minutes, right? It was long, I remember.
Yeah, it was over a half hour.
Yeah.
So it was great. I mean, it was an amazing moment to see all the fans there and do that. And now what E3 has become, we understand what it is and kind of use it when we really have something big to say to make sure that we put a lot of time into making sure we're showing it the right way it can be shown.
Cool.
Thank you.
Next question. Yeah. Sure, if you get a mic.
Hi. You mentioned that, of course, experience, you think a lot about the experience you want to give the player and the tone you want to give on when you are working on your ideas. My question is, how do you keep that vision after months and years of development and put yourself in the eyes of a player and not in the eyes of a developer to make sure you deliver the experience that you want to deliver?
That's a really good question. That's probably one of the, it's not just myself, it's how do you share that, right? Because a lot of people are creating content. I'm trying to think of tricks or things that we have. One of the things that actually helps, believe it or not, is something like, I'll go back to E3, where everybody is working on the game, but then when we have to give a demo or show it, it makes us synthesize, okay, how do we tell somebody in 15 minutes, this is what it is, and we really are focused? So times like that really do help. And then we have started to try to do that internally. So we have a big monthly meeting with everybody with Bethesda Game Studios. And that meeting gets streamed to the other offices. So you're looking at 400-ish people who are together in a meeting, and every month we have groups of the team come up and say, okay, here's what we did in the game this month. Here's why it's great, and try to keep people focused in. But usually our games are so big that 6 to 8 months out from release, we have all these different parts, and they might be cool, but they're not quite gelling together the way we want. And that's what we spend the last, it's like something we're doing now in Fallout 76, is trying bringing all those pieces together where it doesn't feel like, 7 different games.
Thank you.
Yep, there's up there, it looks like. Last question, maybe? Until your son asks a question.
Hi, I'm curious about VR, AR, and other possible technologies that may appear. Do you get excited about these kind of technologies, and what kind of things do you imagine yourself doing with them once they become more mainstream, if they become mainstream?
First, I think it's great. I'm a little more VR than AR personally, though I've seen good versions of both. We've obviously done Skyrim and Fallout 4 in VR. Really, really great projects to work on. If you're a game developer, and a lot of you are, when you get new tech like that, someone sends you a new VR headset, that's like Christmas. Like, okay, all right, let's open the presents. New video card, new console system, dev kits, VR headsets, it's awesome. I do think, I don't know if it'll ever become mainstream the way people think of it, because I think that kind of very closed-in, insular experience, people are still going to want to look at a screen often. It could just be constricting. But the technology is going to get better and better. So I don't think it will ever wholly replace the other screen. It might. But I think it's going to become popular enough where it's a key way a lot of people game. And we're just about to enter what I'll call the second generation of VR, where the resolution's higher, you can do some really good experiences. But usually, historically, it's not till like the third generation of something where it starts getting popular, where the quality goes up and the price point comes down. A lot of people have it. My personal opinion is that will hit, if you look at VR bases of people playing, mobile is, by far. Because it's easier. And one of the things we're doing with Elder Scrolls Blades, the mobile game, is we've also built that to support VR so that we can, do that from a device in your pocket that you can slide into a headset all the way up to, a high-end, HTC device or something like that.
Cool.
Thank you.
Last question, I think. Have time for one.
Sure.
One more?
One more question.
Who's going to take the last question? That responsibility.
Left him speechless.
No, anyone?
No more
ready
questions.
enough? No more
All right.
questions? Okay,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
Thanks
for
everyone.
coming.
Okay. Congratulations, Todd.